Welcome back, folks. Today we're doing something a little different than our normal RV tour. I've brought in 3 different sewer hoses from Camco, from the lowest end to the highest end. We're going to compare them, all of their parts and their accessories. We're going to show how strong they are by testing them and find out if you really do get what you pay for. Now before we get started, I want to go over some quick specs. Here at the far end of the table, we have our basic sewer hose kit from Camco. This is vinyl, it's a 12 mil thickness, and it retails for around $22. Next up on the table, we have our super heavy duty sewer hose kit from Camco. This is also vinyl, but it has an 18 mil thickness. This retails for around $50 in the marketplace today. And last but not least, we have the Rhino series from Camco. This is definitely the most expensive, coming in at around 90 bucks on the marketplace today, but we've gotten away from the vinyl and we're into a thermoplastic elastomer, which is like a rubber plastic hybrid. It even has a cage around the outside to help protect it. They call it an exoskeleton, and it's about a 24 mil thickness, so it should be super tough. Let's unbox these guys and compare their fit and feel. Our entry-level hose, well, let's face it, there's not much to it. It's only 10 feet long. Note that some of the other hoses were definitely longer, and you may need that in some camps to reach from your connection down to the camp sewer hose connection. Also of note here is that this appears to just be friction fit onto the fittings. What I mean by that is it looks like the hose has just been slid on, and I don't even know if it's glued. As I peel this back, it doesn't look like there's glue there. We have an opaque head, which means I can't really tell what's flowing through it. And the connection ring that goes back to the RV is relatively small and doesn't have a large grip at all. It does, however, have a universal docking point which locks to our hose and has a gasket. So that's going to prevent things from leaking. That's kind of nice. That definitely provides a solid connection down to our dump. I'm kind of excited to look at the mid-level hose and see what's different about it and where our money's going. So let's go ahead and unbox it. Our mid-level hose is already more exciting than that entry-level hose. Just picking it up, I can feel the difference when I squeeze it. It's definitely heavier, it's definitely a stronger material. That friction fit that we saw before is no longer there. This looks like it's gasketed and actually sealed in. There's a decently deep piece of plastic that goes on the interior. And if you notice earlier what I said about the intro hose is that it had a small ring for connecting back to the RV. I feel like this is much bigger, much easier to grasp onto. It has larger little knobs so your hand can really grab it. There's 4 points of contact here instead of 2, so getting it click locked on is going to happen a lot faster. We have 2 10-foot hoses, so that's definitely going to give us the distance we need, even when we're a little further away from the sewer hose connection than normal. And then they've given us all of these accessories. So for our ends, we have a nice clear point that hooks up to that universal connector that goes down into the sewage port. Now, being clear is both gross and awesome at the same time. It lets us see if things are moving. And they've given us 2 points of that so that we can see at the RV, once we pull the gate valve, whether that's moving or not, and we can see at the end whether it's moving or not. Also of note, this spins. That didn't happen on our entry level. What that means is you're not kinking your hose as you're spinning and locking this onto the RV. I think that's pretty slick. Now, the last thing that they've given us in this whole big set that I think is really cool are these end caps. So what these do is physically close off our sewer hose for transport. So you've got that nasty sewer hose. Yes, you hose it out, please be smart, but you can close it up and not have to worry about anything leaking out the ends before the next time you use it. I think this is a really great value and probably what most first-time RVer buyers should get into first if they want to step up and pay the premium for the Super Extreme kit. That said, I think the Extreme kit, the Rhino kit, is probably worth every penny, so let's unbox it and take a look at what's different about it. The Rhino kit, immediately the first thing I notice is how it's bright orange. You're not gonna miss this thing. You're not gonna trip over it. Somebody that's doing lawn work is definitely gonna see it. It's stiffer. You hear that? That slinky is very stiff, so it holds its shape when you bend it. It feels much stronger than the previous two hoses, and the connection points are far more solid. They're much larger and much more beefy. However, where we connect it to the actual camper and then back to our sewer connection are much the same as the heavy duty kit that we saw before, in the sense that we've got the 4-point ring, we've got some nice big things to hold on to, and it spins at the head. One thing I was a little bit disappointed by, in our super heavy duty kit, we had a second clear extender to go up to the RV side and a clear down at the sewer connection point. This only has the clear sewer connection point, but they did something kind of cool. They gave us a series of caps just for that piece. So not only do we have caps for both of our sewer hoses to keep those locked up and keep stuff from coming out of them, we can also lock off this end piece too to keep it from contaminating other things. I think that's pretty neat. Same deal with the universal connector. It works just like the previous two did. Outside of that, I think this thing's really cool. It definitely feels strong, but we're gonna find out just how strong it is. We've got a few tests in mind, so let's take them outside and see how they stack up against each other. Before we just go ahead and full on try to destroy these hoses, I want to do kind of a pressure test. So I've got brand new trailer here with fresh water put into the gray tank, and we're running fresh water through the system. So I don't have to worry about wearing gloves. We don't have any sanitization hazards going on here. But I'm going to basically pressurize this hose. I've capped off one end of it, and we're going to see if it leaks anywhere new out of the box. Let's go ahead and pull the gray tank and see what happens. All right, we can see the water expanding the hose. Everything's looking pretty dry. Now, the only way I can tell that there's water in this hose is by the sheer simple fact that I can see it moving around. We've already sprung a leak. It's happening right here at the end. I don't know if you guys can see that on the camera, but this thing's definitely shooting a little water out right at its ends. Here, let me close this back off. Well, I'm not entirely surprised that this had a little bit of a leak at this junction point. This is our least expensive hose. That said, let's unhook it, let's pull out the heavy duty hose and see how it fares. I love this hose because immediately with its clear accessories, we can see the water flowing into it. We aren't just relying on seeing the hose bend and move or feeling the weight of it. I can physically see the stuff pushing in. Everything's dry so far. All of our connection points are dry. Well, we've got a little bit of a leak right here at the cap, but that cap is not necessarily entirely built to hold water in. All of our main connection points, though, are dry. So in other words, everywhere where the hose is connected is dry. I like that. Let's hook up the Rhino hose and see how it compares. I love how it kind of expands like that and makes noise as it does. All of our main connection points, again, solid. We're not seeing any leaking at any junctures here or here. It seems to be withstanding pressure really well. All right, well, that gives us a baseline. So let's take these things out and see how much damage they can take. We're gonna start with dragging them. Then we're gonna crush them. We're gonna try to cut them up and then we're gonna stretch them out. For our first stress test, we've decided to mimic the everyday abuse that these hoses go through. They get pulled out of the camper, they get tossed onto concrete and asphalt, they get tossed onto the gravel, they get drug around with water in them. Basically, they suffer abrasion every time you use them. So we've decided to speed that up by attaching them to the back of the truck, and we're gonna drag them around. Let's see how they do. We've disconnected our hoses from the truck and taken a look at the damage. As expected, our lowest price point is destroyed. This cheap vinyl is, well, just that, cheap vinyl. It ripped clean open, is almost unusable now. However, when we step up to that heavier duty vinyl, we notice that we definitely have some abrasion on the hose connector itself, but not enough to where it doesn't function correctly. And there may be some pinpoint little pinprick holes that are in here that might leak, but otherwise this hose looks pretty good. The Rhino, clearly we did some damage. We scraped the H right off the logo, but outside of that, this hose is in great shape. This could easily connect back. All of its spinning mechanisms seem to work just fine, and the physical hose itself shows no sign of damage from being drug across the ground. That's pretty impressive, even though this is the most expensive one. Let's jump on to the next phase of our torture testing and crush these things. Our drag test definitely revealed some weaknesses in the materials on our sewer hoses, but it didn't quite test structural integrity. We want to see what keeps them round and how well it stays round after being stepped on or crushed. So let's get to it. Me stepping on these was simply not enough. They're in great shape still. Let's run them over. Impressively, the Rhino hose seems to just bounce back from the truck being run over it. It does have a slight bit of a crease, but overall, it looks like this could still be a functional sewer hose. Our two lesser vinyl hoses, though, did not fare so well. These are absolutely pancaked. I don't think these would hold up to our pressure test. I think water's just gonna spew out of them, much less if you actually had sewage running through it. It just wouldn't make it. We do have some usable sections of tube left, though. We want to try something a little more extreme just to see how they hold up against things like yard tools. Let's hit these bad boys with a weed whacker and see what happens. If you've ever stayed in a campground long enough, you know that the maintenance crew is going to roll through eventually. We figured this would be a great test because, well, let's face it, accidents do happen. Well, our two vinyl hoses are toast. I don't even need to pressure test them to know that we put giant holes in them with the weed eater. I can see the ribbing exposed and see the holes all the way down through them on both of them. The Rhino hose, however, held up pretty great. I'd say this one's yard tool approved. But our goal here with this video is to see what it takes to break these things, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. This next test is in no way realistic, but like I said, we want to break them. Let's do it. Don't try this at home, kids. Well, that was not exciting, but this hose was already pretty damaged. Let's pull it out of the chain and see what kind of carnage we could get out of the other two. I'm in shock. I did not expect to see the Rhino hose break apart like this before the heavy duty hose that had already sustained a whole lot of damage. Now granted, this test is absurd and doesn't really mimic anything in real life unless you were to leave your hose hooked up to your camper and the sewage thing and drive off from your campsite. If you're doing that though, you might have a few bigger problems. I really think that this kind of wraps it up. I think we should go into some final thoughts about the destruction that we've done here today. Well, that was fun. We learned a lot, specifically that the low-end entry-level vinyl sewer hose is probably not worth the cardboard that they put it in. But if you get this for free from your dealership with the purchase of an RV, sure, use it for a little bit, but ultimately long-term, I'd be looking to replace it. Our medium or mid-level hose, the heavy-duty one from Camco, actually fared pretty well in all of our realistic tests. It didn't hold up to being crushed super well, but I think for the price point and all the accessories that it comes with is super worthwhile. If you're gonna be staying in your RV long-term or traveling a whole lot, I do think the Rhino hose is the way to go. It was super abrasion resistant and it held up to everything we threw at it, short of the absurd things like yanking it apart with a tractor. That's not something that's really realistic, but we just wanted to see what it took to tear these things up. You guys, if you like this video, please subscribe to our channel. It takes a lot of work to put this stuff together, and we're not sponsored by Camco, so like and subscribe. You can also follow us on our other social media channels on Facebook and Instagram. We're Southern RV. Check us out, and until next time, happy camping.